Welcome to the very first episode of the Open Train of Thought podcast. I'm your moderator, Sam Blue Sr., and we want to personally thank each and every one of you for tuning in and being a part of this new platform built for real conversations, real perspectives, and real people. The Open Train of Thought podcast was created to encourage open dialogue on the topics that impact our communities, our culture, our education system, our policies, and our future. Here we believe conversations matter even when those opinions differ because understanding starts with listening. Before we get started, make sure you take a moment to subscribe, follow, like by hitting that thumbs up or the bell, and sharing this podcast to all your friends and family. By subscribing and following our pages, you'll receive regular updates on future episodes, live discussions, guest announcements, and opportunities to join the conversation yourself. Help us grow this community by sharing the podcast with your friends, family, and social networks. We're on Facebook, X, Twitch, Spotify, and YouTube. Tonight, we're welcoming our very first guest to the show. We have Dr. Kenjuana McCray joining us for tonight's discussion. Thank you for being here and helping us launch this insightful platform.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite, Mr. Blue.
Tonight, we're going to cover three major topics that include gerrymandering, private versus public schools, and we'll touch some on birthright citizenship. So sit back, get comfortable, and join the conversation as we begin the journey with the very first episode of the Open Train of Thought podcast. Now, let's get into it by starting with our legal disclaimer, and we will start the show.
This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Views expressed are those of the host and guest and do not represent any organizations. Discussions on politics, policies, and current events are based on opinions and available information, which may change. This podcast does not provide professional advice, so listeners should research and verify information independently. Host and guests are not liable for any decisions or outcomes based on the content.
Good evening, and we're going to get right into it. But before we do, I just wanted to see if you want to just take about 30 seconds to let the viewers know what your background is and just your perspective on life in general.
Okay, I am, again, Dr. Kenjuana McCray, and I just completed 3 terms as Mayor Pro Tem for the town of Hope Mills. And if you don't know what the town of Hope Mills is, it's right outside of Fayetteville, where we call ourselves a little city, little sister city to Fayetteville. I have been in higher education for 20 years. I am the dean at a local community college, and I also taught in public school for 2 years. So some of the information that I will share would be based off of my personal experience as well. I also have 2 children, an adult son and a teenage daughter who has went to private school and is currently in public school. And I would like to say that the thoughts and things that I share are completely of my own. They are not representative of anyone else. I'm very active in my local community, which is Cumberland County. I have a lot of experience and background in political science. So my bachelor's degree is in political science. My master's degree is in sociology, and my doctorate is in educational leadership. Is there anything else you would like for me to share, Mr. Blue?
No, that's amazing. You call me Sam.
Sam.
And with that, I'm pretty sure you have a whole lot to offer, and I'm sure the viewers are definitely wanting to ask you questions possibly. So viewers, feel free to comment any questions you may have. Just continue to just share the link. So first, we're going to start off with a video, and it's going to basically explain gerrymandering.
So, you want to know what gerrymandering is? First, let's start with Government 101. In the United States, each state elects a certain number of representatives based on the state's population. The larger your population, the more representatives you have. Each representative represents a district, or a geographical area including its voters. Ideally, we want to have a range of representatives who reflect the political views of the population across the state. But how do we decide who gets to vote for each representative? Let's look at an example. Suppose we have a very tiny state of 50 people. 30 of them belong to the blue party and 20 belong to the red party. And just our luck, they all live in a nice even grid with blues on one side of the state and reds on the other. Now, let's say we need to divide the state into 5 districts. Each district will send one representative to the House to represent the people. Fortunately, because our citizens live in a neatly ordered grid, it's easy to draw 5 lengthy districts, 2 for the reds and 3 for the blues. Voila! Perfectly proportional representation, just as the founders intended. Now, let's say instead that the blue party controls the state government, and they get to decide how the lines are drawn. Rather than draw districts horizontally, they draw them vertically, so that in each district there are 6 blues and 4 reds. With a comfortable blue majority in the state, each district elects a blue candidate to the House. The blues win 5 seats, and the reds don't get a single one. Oh well. Finally, what if the red party controls the state government? The reds know they're at a numerical disadvantage, but with some creative boundary drawing, they can slice the blue population up such that they only get a majority in 2 districts. So despite making up 40% of the population, the reds win 60% of the seats. Not bad. This process of redrawing district lines to give an advantage to one party over another is called gerrymandering, and it's nothing new. The term gerrymander is named after early 19th century Massachusetts Governor Elbridge Gerry, who redrew the map of the Senate's districts in 1810 in order to weaken the opposing Federalist Party. Our example is of course a huge simplification. In the real world, people don't live in neatly ordered grids sorted by political party. But for politicians looking to give themselves an advantage at redistricting time, the process is exactly the same, and the consequences are very real. Gerrymandering is at least partly to blame for lopsided representation in the House seen in recent elections. And, it's been argued by the president, for political polarization, since representatives don't have to compromise hardline views in order to win seats.
So, with that description of gerrymandering, what are your thoughts on that?
So my thoughts are, we've been talking about gerrymandering for years. And most of the time, as the video alluded to, most of the time it's about political power. And to be perfectly honest, the Republican Party has redrawn districts that benefit them politically. And so have the Democrats. As you and I were speaking before the podcast started, we actually have some districts in Cumberland County that are drawn, like Senate districts that are drawn, that are heavily Democrat. So a Republican probably would not be able to win those districts. Additionally, some of them are also heavily African-American districts as well. So the maps have been drawn, like I said, to heavily help a Democrat or Republican. However, if I'm not jumping ahead, Mr. Blue or Sam, if I'm not jumping ahead, the current gerrymandering that we are seeing in these former Confederate states, where they are basically, the terminology is diluting, because that's exactly what it is, diluting the Black vote and Black representation. It definitely is racial. I don't consider it, I know you might have a different opinion, I don't consider it as more so of, I do consider it as being a Republican heavy drawn districts, but the way that they are drawn, these districts where they are basically taking away Black votes and Black representation and messing with our 1965 Voters' Right Act that were put into place so people could be, or African Americans could be represented or could be elected. It is definitely, it's one of the most racially gerrymandering agendas that I have ever seen in my lifetime.
Okay. So when we look at, I look at gerrymandering as it was designed to benefit the incumbent, so they can stay in power longer. And I do definitely think that recently it has gone to the extreme. Like when Texas did their redraw, and I think it brought 5 more Republican seats. I think also when California went back and they marked out, they did their redraw, they put it on the ballot and it won. And they basically, equalize all the votes that Texas would have received in the congressional seats. I think when it started to get out of hand was when Virginia just went, their governor, she ran on Virginia being a 6-5 state, 6 Democrat, 5 Republican. The population of Virginia is roughly 55% Democratic, 45% Republican. So I think that map and the way their seats are, to me, Virginia is like one of the most perfectly equal states in the whole U.S. So I think when the governor went ahead and had them do those maps, I think that's when South Carolina hopped in it, Tennessee hopped in it, Alabama hopped in it.
All those Confederate states.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, Indiana, we're talking Ohio, Indiana, Alabama's north. It's not considered, that southern, but I think everybody began to start to look at it like Utah. Everybody just said, you know what, since they want to go this way, let's go ahead, let's go hard in the paint. And I think that's what ended up happening. I think in perspective, the issue that Virginia made that was in question is that them being a Commonwealth, they broke their own laws on how they're supposed to redraw maps. And a lot of people are saying, well, they just hating because they broke their laws, because I think when they started to redraw and they started to put it on the ballot, early voting had already started. So you had over 1 million people that already had placed votes, with not knowing what district they're in, because, so I think that was one thing. The other thing was the 60-day threshold. I think we just hit 60 days. In the next couple of weeks, we'll hit that, where before it's submitted to the governor, it's supposed to go back to the General Assembly, and they just broke their own constitution. So I think all the other states, though, that I mentioned, because they already got the ball rolling when Virginia started, they're like, well, we're not going to not do it. Let's go ahead and keep doing it. And I think that's the part of society I hate now, is that everything is about extremes.
Yeah.
You're moderate or in the middle. You either have to be all the way left or all the way right. And I think that's where our politicians are starting to become so excessive, because I hear a lot of people now saying, let's pass a law to stop gerrymandering. Let's completely, but when you're in power, like the Democrats are saying that now, let's stop gerrymandering. But when the Republicans are in power, it's just vice versa. Like Democrats are talking about like stacking the Supreme Court to, seats to make it like 50-50 or 60-40. And so the Republicans come back in power, they're going to stack the court. Next thing you know, we're going to have over 100 Supreme Court justices, after having 9 for almost 200 years. So I just think things are definitely getting out of hand. But I also wanted to see your thoughts on the maps of Memphis. And I personally just want to make some comparisons to the Virginia map since I mentioned them. So what are your thoughts on Memphis?
And so with Memphis, I think it's one of the, I think Memphis is probably gotten one of the most, to me, in my opinion, I think they've gotten some of the biggest controversy around what's going on right now. And I think that, I know that Justin and Jason, the congressmen, have been, stirring up a lot of information, a lot of noise about what's going on. And it's rightfully they should. I've had the pleasure to meet both of them at a national Black conference that I went to some years ago in Tennessee. So I got some time to personally interact with them, respect the work that they do. But I believe that I know that, and it's going to be very interesting because I love to hear your perspective about what's going on with Tennessee. But I believe the extreme. I know that it seems like they're acting or they're being extreme about what's going on. But what is happening with us? It is with this gerrymandering. It is extreme. So you're talking about them pretty much gutting and messing with the 1965 Voters' Right Act that during my parents' lifetime that this was enacted, but it's been going on. This has been enacted before you and I were even born. So something that these people had to work so hard for, and I know we're going to talk more about that in a little bit with the 1965 Voters' Right Act, with them pretty much gutting this, what was worked so hard for, so that we can have some kind of equal representation. I believe that they should be as extreme as they're being, because the question, and I like some of the reels or the Instagram reels of things that I'm saying, is kind of like, this is what's going on. What are we going to do about it? Some people are saying it's not a civil rights. We're not going through a civil rights era. It's worse than a civil rights era, or a diluting power. But I do believe for people like me during my lifetime, it absolutely is one of the most extreme things that not the most extreme things, but one of the most extreme things that I've seen go on in government. So like I said, you got these districts that were protected by law, so that people can have equal representation. And now you are just pretty much saying that you're going to not respect that and go and gut it and pull it. And then today they went and they removed every House Democrat and every Black member from committee assignments. And I do believe, I know that some decorum was broken, but in a time like this, you thought it was beneficial to go and do something like that. So I do believe it was, I know that there's decorum, but I believe that there's some things that this was a time that they shouldn't have done that. So I think that Tennessee is probably, like I said, one of the most extreme states when it comes to how these maps are being drawn. And it could be because of, like I said, that representation there and how vocal they are about what is going on.
Okay. So when we look at Tennessee, specifically Memphis, the 1964 Civil Rights Act was signed, where a lot of things changed, and a lot of people wanted Black representation. They wanted it to be built. And the districts that were in Tennessee were in place prior to the Civil Rights Act. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. But when I look at, what I'll ask you and the audience, you guys can definitely comment your feelings on it. But do you feel, if all those Black folks in Memphis voted Republican, do you feel, and I'm asking you, Dr. McCray, if you feel like it would be such an issue, such a loud noise, if they all were GOP voters or voting Republican?
So are you saying that you think it's like this because they are voting Democrat? Most of these people are voting for Democrats.
Well, when you look at the numbers, only, I think 16% of Black folks as a whole are conservatives or registered Republicans. So the majority is voting Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
So I know, when we talk about gerrymandering, it's about your incumbents holding power. So me personally, I don't necessarily see it as to me, as much as race as it is political party. I feel it's more about political party. That's my perspective, because if it wasn't about political party, I feel like nobody would have issues with this young lady, Charlotte Bergman, winning over this guy who's been in the seat of that district for almost 30 years. And now, because of the redistricting, she's about to take the reins from him. So, but people are hating that. So you mean you mean to tell me that this old white man needs to stay in power, but you want you want black representation, but not in your representative. And I just feel like if the tables were turned, everybody would be calling him a racist and oppressor, and she would be the one that everybody would rally around. So what are your thoughts about her? Like she has right now, she's 80% likely to replace him with the redistricting.
So I believe in some of these cases, like I said, in some of these cases, it is the districts are going to be drawn where there are Democrats and African Americans that benefit from it. However, I feel like right now, most of the redistricting is going to be drawn where African American representation is stripped away or diluted, and where it's more beneficial for Republican candidates, not Democrats. I think that she is a minority when it comes to the gerrymandering and the redistricting and redrawing. And I think they have to, when they're doing it, they got to throw some districts in there anyway to make it seem like what they're doing is fair and that they're giving everybody a fair chance. And I do 100% agree with you, where most of the time I would say it's about political parties. However, I believe this time we cannot deny that race has a lot to do with it. Like, I don't feel like we can separate the two this time, because like I said, you have this situation with this lady here, but in most of these cases, that's not going to be, that won't be so. It will not be where African Americans will be bunched or packed in an area where they can elect people that they feel like look like them or represent them. And to be clear, when all of these people are sworn in, we make an oath. It's supposed to matter if you're a Republican or Democrat. You are making an oath that you are serving people. So I always tell people I served with a majority Republican board when I was in the town of Hope Mills. I'm heavily involved in the Democrat Party here in Cumberland County. I'm a state executive representative for Cumberland County, so I don't take that away. However, when we're making like policies and we're doing things, when we're talking about stormwater and we're talking about streets and we're talking about programming for children or parks and recs and stuff like that, nobody cares if you're a Republican or Democrat. They just want these services. They want these things done. And so I didn't make policy based off if I was a Republican or a Democrat, which again, I don't deny being a Democrat, but I was effectively able to work with a majority Republican board each and every time I was on my board. Because again, if you look at it from that perspective and not from party, and I wish that people would, when they're running for office or when they're making policy or laws or things like that, a lot of people are scared of re-election. So a lot of times they'll vote against their own interests or the people they represent own interests over a party line, and it ends up hurting us. I saw here in North Carolina where about 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we had a delegation that heavy Democrat delegation here that worked across the aisles in Raleigh. And they were pretty much, all of them either did not run for office or they lost their election because their party pretty much put up money for other candidates to run against them and would not support them because they worked across the aisle. Now, what did that work across the aisle did? It brought in historical money for Cumberland County that we've never seen before. It brought in historical money for Hope Mills that we've never seen before. It brought in historical money for Fayetteville State University, where they were able to tear down a lot of those dorms that were really old and they needed funding. So they did work across the aisle. And I think that's what you're supposed to do. But again, they were ousted by their party because they worked across the aisle. But if they wouldn't have done it, we would not have been able to bring this money in to Cumberland County, because they could have said, well, I'm not voting with it. And now you also have to be very careful, which I have learned being in politics. When they put these bills together, people will say, oh, you voted for this bill. Now they pack that stuff up. So either you vote for the bill or not. Now it could be something in that bill where they don't support teacher pay, but then they got a whole lot of other stuff in there that's good. And so you got to make the decision. Am I going to vote for it or not? It's a bill. It's not like you get to go in there and you get to pick and choose. Now you can negotiate what you want to do and, why you're not going to support the bill and change some things. And then somebody will turn around and say, well, Sam, you voted to not support teacher pay. I didn't support the teacher pay, and I wanted to support the teacher pay, but then they were giving this money right here to the higher ed, to Fayetteville State University and Hope Mills. I gave them $5 million, with some other things in there. Mm-hmm. So you have to there's so many things for us to learn and be a part of, but that's the downside again, where people working across the aisle to get things done for their communities. People have to start thinking that way and not being afraid of getting reelected. Now, I'm not saying you go in there and you make crazy decisions, but what I'm saying is you go in there and you make bold decisions that you think are right. And I don't know if I'm gonna get elected. Each and every time people was like, oh, you're gonna get elected again. I don't, because I wear my heart on my shoulders and my sleeves, and I vote the way that I think is best. And sometimes I make these people mad, and sometimes I make these people mad. But at the end of the day, I think it's the best thing for my community. So when we get away from that, that's what's going on with this gerrymandering and all of this other stuff, but people packing up and going along with what their parties are saying. But even what I respect is there's even some Republicans that's being like, hey, we're going too far here. We're going too far with what we have going on. And I know I was going to go into the 1965 Voters' Right Act, but because you want to wait?
Yeah, before you go into that, let me ask you a question on, so you mentioned Hope Mills. Do you consider Hope Mills red or blue?
Red.
Okay. So you had enough support to get, I'm pretty sure the few times that you was elected, your voting totals increase each year. Is that a true statement?
No, it actually is not.
Okay, so as far as the numbers, did it, like your first election that you won, was that number higher than the last election you won?
Okay, so the first time I ran for office, I did not win. I ran for office in 2017. So I ran for office in 2019. And that's why I always encourage people to go out there and try again. So I went from not being elected to being the highest elected the second time I won. And I could have been the mayor. I got more votes than the mayor. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to tell you now, I campaigned my behind off. I went out there and I was exhausted after my election. Me and my team, we worked from April until election night. We worked. So, we put, and then it was a lot of controversy around my first election. And, I was the first African-American elected. I was the first female mayor pro tem. And it was, to be a small town, it was a campaign from hell. It was tough. But I think all of that and the stuff that they was doing to me and stuff was in the news. And I think more people were hearing about it. And then you also have to realize when you're messing with people like that, and some people sitting back was like, nah, we weren't really into the election, but now y'all gonna mess with her like that. We're gonna make sure we go out and vote. So my first election, I got more votes. And then my second election, I still did good. I still got more votes than the mayor. I think I went down a little bit, but then as a top vote getter, I was a top vote getter for all of the commissioners, all three times that I ran. Mm-hmm. So my last time, my numbers were, they were a bit lower, but then I also become, you get people that supported you the first time. And now I voted that they open up this road behind your neighborhood and you don't like it. So now I just lost this whole group of people that were supporting because I hadn't done anything to them before. Now I've done something that they don't like. And so I think I had some of that, but I absolutely believe the first time that I ran and I campaigned, or the second time where I won, I campaigned my behind off. I most certainly did for months. So we worked hard, we put it out there, but also you gain enemies, during that time that you're running, because like I said, when you are voting with your conscience and you're not just voting, like I said, you don't go in there and vote on a Democrat or Republican. You go in there and you vote off of the policies and the things that you think is best for your community. You're gonna lose some people. You're gonna make some people mad. Some people want you to be in cliques. I had a very tumultuous time with our mayor. It was very, she was in the news all the time, very controversial. And she and I worked together, and some people were mad at that. So they wanted me not to work with her, and they didn't like her. So they wanted me not to like her. And I'm not doing that. As much, I'm the mayor pro tem. She was the mayor. We disagreed about some things which people didn't know, but a lot of that stuff we disagreed in private and went out there and did the work for the people in public professionally. So, so it was all of that, which we're going to do another podcast about all of that later on.
Definitely.
But yeah, it is red. It's certainly red. And people thought I could not win. People told me that I was going to not win.
Yeah, they didn't know you, the people that said that, but those of us that knew you, hey, it came to fruition what everybody else saw. But I asked you that because I see you as someone, even though you're Democrat, you don't mind. What really matters to you are the people that's in your area, the people that voted for you. And I don't think if someone didn't vote for you, you would not care about them. Like you cared about the entire town. And I think right now we're just in the, I remember some of the new Congress people that was being sworn in for the US. One was a Republican, one was a Democrat, and they were like really, really good friends. And after they got sworn in, both their families went out to eat. And then the Speaker of the House at that time, she had basically called one to a meeting and said, hey, you can't go to lunch with that guy. He's across the aisle. And he's like, well, he's my friend. You're like, we went to college together. We played football in college together. Like, that's my boy. And she's like, no, that's not how Congress works. We stay to ourselves. And that's the part about politics that I don't like.
That's the part I don't like.
And I feel like the way your leadership is, I think I see that leadership like I saw how Bill Clinton did things. Like, he's a Democrat, but he did get some things done with working with both sides. I think Obama was able to get some of those things done. Like, you know, he got that warmonger Lindsey Graham, you know, to start backing them and stuff. So you have to be influential. But I think right now, a lot of the politicians, they're not just trying to be influential, they're trying to be viral. You know, they're trying to take that 15 minutes and make it stretch to 3, 4, 5 hours. And I think that's the issue that I have, is like people are starting to lose common sense in that. But I know you mentioned earlier about diluting the vote. So I just wanted to ask you how you felt about this map. This was the map of Virginia that we spoke about earlier that you mentioned. And when we look at this map here, we look at how they redrew all these districts. And when I go all the way up to DC, you see this diamond here?
Yes.
That's DC. So basically, you have Richmond, you got Newport News, you have Prince George, like you have all these. But the problem that I had with the new map of Virginia is that all 88% of the people within the 15-mile radius are white. And they're all around DC. They're powerhouses in DC. So all these people are now speaking for the black folks down here at Newport News, for the black folks here in Richmond, for the people over here in Prince George. And that's kind of like the issue that I have. So that's what I meant was when I asked you earlier, do you think it's about political party, or do you think it's about race? Because if I was a black person in Virginia and there was some black folks sounding off, like they're removing our voice and they was voting against, I think it was just over 1% that it won, you know, when it was put on a ballot. But a lot of people saw that it was taking a voice away. So when it comes to Virginia, you know, on that aspect, on what I just showed, what are your feelings on that? Do you feel like now they did a map that removed the black voice, the black vote from Prince George, Newport News, Richmond? You know, do you feel that way, or do you feel it was just political party?
So again, I believe a lot of times they go hand in hand because of the statistic that you mentioned earlier. Not all, but a lot of times, African Americans is grouped in with the Democratic Party. And I'm not saying that all African Americans vote Democrat. I'm not saying that. However, but a lot of times it goes hand in hand. So like what you just shown should never happen. And the other part that goes along with that too is when you talk about like the diluting the vote is just like very psychological, because now what is making people feel like I'm powerless. Like, I don't know, I don't have a choice. I don't have representation, and they're doing things that are completely out of my power. It also causes, so it's layered, it's very layered. It causes confusion. Like you stated earlier, the way that those maps are drawn and the way that stuff is, it can be very confusing to people. So like what I explained to you earlier, they redrew our maps, I think in the last election cycle. So my senator is in Moore County. And he can actually win an election but he represents all the Hope Mills with a little skinny part of it, which is there's another senator that represents one little part of Hope Mills, right? So he can get elected. He don't even have to have our votes. He can have Moore County, but he's my representative. But you try to explain that to people and try to have them understand. So the average person would get confused. I live in Hope Mills in Cumberland County. How is my senator in Moore County? That is confusing. And it's frustrating. And like what you talked about, how they started moving the stuff around with the maps, and people are actively voting and they think they voted for one person or they voted in one district and now they're in another. Do you think they're going to be? So some of these people are not like you and I. We're heavily politically invested and involved. Do you think that's going to motivate them to go back out? And those maps are confusing. So I'm looking at a comment here, but I'm just saying, do you think that's going to motivate them to go back out and vote again? And that's where we get this voter apathy from, where people don't want to vote, or they feel like their vote, their vote doesn't matter. It's because of all of this. I call it foolishness. It's a whole bunch of foolishness. Also, same thing with Hope Mills. If you can have a Hope Mills address, and I kept trying to tell people, if you live in Grays Creek, for instance, you can't vote for me. So they'd be like on social media, I'm gonna vote for you. If you're not in the city limits of Hope Mills, you can't vote for me, even if you have a Hope Mills address. You can be in Fayetteville. My House representative lives and has a Fayetteville address, but lives in Hope Mills. So when you're trying to, even as a candidate, trying to figure that out and try to educate voters, that stuff is confusing. People are all over the place. So if I tell them you're like in Jack Brick area, kind of like where my sister live, and you step on one side of the saying you in Fayetteville and you on the other side of the saying you in Hope Mills, that is confusing. So when you do that to people, it does not encourage people to vote. They don't feel like they're informed voters. They don't feel like they know who they're voting for. So it, like I said, this stuff with them redrawing stuff, we do have to be educated. We do have to know what's going on. But this stuff about them purging voters, people think they're registered to vote and they're not. It's not just the maps. It's all of these other things that's going on around it. And you have to pay attention. Like, it's very, very layered. And what does that do? For candidates, you feel defeated. And so you don't want to get up and you don't want to run and you don't want to represent people. For people that are being represented, I work, like I said, somebody went and voted and now you're telling me they were drawing districts. I thought I voted for so-and-so, but now you got me in another district. That is confusing. And I think it's meant to be confusing for people. I think it's meant to be confusing and both confusing and frustration. And so, like I said, it's just very, I think it is most of the time, it has something to do with political party. Political party also has a lot to do with race. Not all the time, because you got a lot of independent voters out here now, and I respect it. But in this situation, especially a lot with the southern states, I think it is heavily, it has something to do with race. It heavily does have something to do with race.
Okay, let me ask you this. So you mentioned the southern states, and I mentioned Indiana, Ohio, northern states that are like redrawing maps.
Okay.
I believe Michigan, if I think in their house, they're about 3 shorts of being the majority being GOP. I feel Michigan is going to go through a redraw. When I look at Massachusetts, for example, Massachusetts, 45% of the voters are Republican voters in Massachusetts, but they have the whole, I think it's 7 states in that whole Northeast, 0 Republican representation, but they've gerrymandered to the fullest. And what I feel, honestly, when I look at the potential for gerrymandering taken to the extreme, this isn't a fight that the Democrats can win. And the reason why I say that is because California is already gerrymandered to the max. The whole Northeast is gerrymandered to the max. Jersey, DC, coming down, like I feel the Democrats has abused that more. You know, not just wanting power, they want to slam dunk. They want to do, you know, they're going for the 6th MVP, like, you know, like Jordan. So I think that's the problem, where it's just gotten out of hand.
They started and we finish it.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like and I'll go off on the thing. It's almost like the nuclear option that they have in the Senate.
I don't think it's right on either party. Okay, I told you.
Yeah, the first person to actually exercise that rule was I think he was the Illinois, he was Speaker of the House, Harry Reid. And he basically, Obama was winning. Everybody knew Obama was going to win. And so Harry Reid changed the rules, and he basically said, okay, before you had to have 60 votes for any of your administration, for federal judges, Supreme Court, for all judgeships, you had to have 60 vote. So Harry Reid used the nuclear option in the Senate to say, okay, because he wanted Obama to have all these judges, like to just get all these judges appointed. So he changed the rules, and he basically changed it from a 60 vote threshold to a simple majority, 51 votes. Now, the guy who was the minority, Mitch McConnell, the guy that should have been gone about 30 years ago, he actually told them, you go ahead through with this, we're going to get it, we're going to do it right back. So Harry Reid chose to go through with it. Obama put 250 federal judges in, and then next thing you know, Mitch McConnell gets the Senate. You know, he gets all those, he gets the Senate, he gets all these, he gets the power now to like change rules. So what Mitch McConnell did was, when Obama was trying to get a Supreme Court justice, he was like, no, we're going to wait. You're going to be out of office in a year. Like, I want our new guy to fill it. And basically, Mitch McConnell made it to where I think Trump was able to put in 4 Supreme Court justices. So he basically only had to get a simple majority, you know, because Mitch McConnell told Harry Reid it was going to come back to bite you. So that was like, I don't feel Ketanji Brown Jackson would have gotten 60 votes, you know, so that simple majority helped her. I don't think who was the last white lady that got that Trump nominated and picked. I don't think she would have got 60 votes. But that's the thing right there. I think they changed these rules, and now they're pressuring the Republicans, the speaker or the head of the Senate. They're pressuring him to use the nuclear option again to pass the Save America Act. And he's like, no, I like, he's a constitutionalist. So he just wants everything to go as the Constitution was written. And to me, he's kind of like naive, but a lot of Republicans are. They like the old, those Mitch McConnell type Republicans. They like to bump the grain. They need some static going on because that's how Congress and the Senate should work. So I think when we look at the extremes that are being taken now, because right now the Democrats are saying if they get power, they're going to nuke the filibuster. Like they're already telling the Republicans, when we get power, we are doing it. We are going to change the Senate rules. We're going to stack the Supreme Court where all we need is a simple majority. Like they're telling them that. So if the Republicans choose to go ahead and nuke it and pass the Save America Act and require the voter ID and all that stuff, people are going to be mad. But the Democrats are telling them what their plan is. They're giving them their game plan. So for them not to act on it, but I think what's helping the Democrats now is the head of the Senate, Thune, Senator Thune. He's a constitutionalist. He wants everything to work like it was in 1776. And nothing's wrong with that. I just feel like I feel Democrats are more aggressive. Like I think they get as far to bending the rules as it could be done. Like they're gonna try it. Like look what Virginia did. They knew they was breaking the Constitution in 3-4 different ways, and they still they wasted $70 million of taxpayer money. And now they're appealing it. They're spending $10 million to appeal it, and it's not gonna the Supreme Court may not even take it because it's not a federal issue. So I just think when we talk about those extremes, all those things, I definitely when I have you on another podcast, we definitely want to talk about just the sky, the ceiling that you broke. Like you didn't just reach for the sky, you reached for space. And so I definitely want to discuss that with you, but I do want to see if we can move on to the public school versus private schools, and also just basically the pros and cons. I am going to let you take the reins on that. I do want to just talk about I think it's Baltimore. They're like number 3 in the country as far as spending per student in public schools, and the percentages and I want to talk to you about why you feel, talk about that shortfall the North Carolina just released that they're having. So I do, before you speak on that, I do want to ask everybody, like, I see you watching, we see the comments, but hit that thumbs up for me. Let's grow the platform and just encourage other people to have more dialogue. So what do you think about public school versus private school? Because you have a child that has experienced both. So what's your thoughts on that?
Okay, so I am going to try to be as balanced with this as I possibly can. And I will start off, before I go off rambling, I do want to say that the national average per student funding is $18,870 per student. In North Carolina, we are at $13,680 in public school per pupil. I used to call it per pupil expenditure. So my daughter, we originally put her in private school when she was 3. It was supposed to be something that was temporary, and got into the Christian private school and absolutely loved it. So she stayed in private school until about like the 4th grade. So the idea was we never wanted to take her directly out of private school and put her into public middle school, right? Because that would have been a complete culture shock. Put her in public school, and my son went to public school. Me and my brothers and sisters were all public school educated. I taught in public school for 2 years. got in public school with her, and I was in a complete culture shock because I was used to things working a certain way. And again, I have a big age gap between my children, so it had been some time since I had dealt with the public school system. And we, in our area, we have a very good elementary school system, but still there were some gaps. By gaps, I mean my daughter loved reading, loved books, loved reading so much that I would buy a series of books and run out of stuff, like run out of series and things to buy her to read, because she had developed this love of reading from our household too. But I really think from this private school, very close knit, like family community. She could write very well. She writes in cursive, which people always find it very shocking, asking her, like, where did she learn to write in cursive, which I think is just very shocking. Was my son learned how to write in cursive in public school. He is, like I said, he's 28 years old. I learned how to write in cursive in school, but I think it's a luxury now to even teach handwriting in school. So I thought that was very shocking when she got to public school. And even now, people are asking her, like, where did you learn how to write it? Or even some kids tell her they don't even know how to read her writing in cursive. And sometimes she doesn't, because she doesn't want people to ask her about her handwriting. So the communication with the teachers was completely a shock. And my friend used to tell me, you pay for your communication that you get. You know, we would get a rundown every week, what tests they were having, what they were being tested on, like a packet, like clockwork, whatever the packet of work came home. And, you know, they went over everything. It was just the communication was different. So when she got to the school, and like I said, it's a very good public school here, I was not getting that communication, and I was very shocked. And her teacher kept trying to make implications almost as if private school was easy. And so, like, her math, I think she was off in public school with what they did in math versus what they were taught in public school. And I remember one time, you know, she was younger, he said something about multiplication. I'm like, this girl, no multiplication. She's been learning multiplication like since, like, that's not it. So just like I said, I wasn't really happy with the communication. It was different, but we adjusted. And then when we got to middle school, it was during COVID. She went to middle school during COVID. It was even a bigger adjustment. She is happy because she was very sheltered at the private school. So she's happy with public school right now. So we do a mix of community college, and then she's at her school for some parts of the day. Like I said, love public school, love her principals, know them personally. But I know they're dealing with challenges, right? So dealing with municipal government and SRO officers. I think we have 2 SRO officers at her school. And I think we've even had, or they had a discussion, because it's not we anymore, about having a third SRO officer at that school because of the challenges that they have. So I say all that to say this. They just voted, Board of Education just voted to close 2 schools in Cumberland County last night. There's a whole list of them. Of course, they have to have public hearings. There's a whole list of them that they plan to close. Spring Lake is losing Manchester Elementary. That is about the 3rd school that they've lost. Their kids will go to W.T. Brown, which is right around the corner. But that the only public school that Spring Lake now has is Spring Lake Middle School. This is a result, however, from not just this year or 2 years ago. Public school has been losing a lot of money to these private schools. And also what happens is when the kid, so if your kid went to private school in August and you say, yeah, and in January, I'm going to pull them out and put them back in public school, that money going to stay in that private school. They also, the private schools or charter schools, they don't have to go by the same, they don't have to follow all the same rules and policies and things that we do. In some cases, I like that. In some cases, I don't. I think there is an overemphasis on testing. That was a good thing that I didn't have to experience when she was at the private school. And I think that she performed, like I said, I thought that she performed very, very well. But then when we got to public school, it was this overly stressed about EOG tests and, you know, teaching exactly to those tests, which is, like I said, her teacher, he had some of the highest scores in the school. So he was all in not the school, but the county.
Let's pause that real quick.
Okay.
So you talked about the schools that are closing. I didn't even realize there were that many schools in Spring Lake, but but because it's so much around there, I guess, being
well, Mayrud used to be just a kindergarten school. That's the school I went to. So they closed Mayrud, or Mayrud is like something that Fayetteville Tech does now. They closed Lillian Black, Lillian Black. and now they close in Manchester. Yes.
Oh, so you mentioned a lot of people leaving the public school to go to private school. What would you say your top 3 reasons why people are leaving public school to go to private school? What would be your top 3 reasons?
So some of it in my long story I was alluding to. So some of the behavior issues that we have, and I'm not saying that they're not behavior issues in private or charter schools, behavior issues, because I'm very frustrated about that at my daughter's school as well. And then when you look at this money that we're investing per student, and you're losing, I noticed that in my son's, when he was like his senior year, was like a lot of his teachers were leaving to go to like South Carolina and other states, losing good teachers because of pay. So we're at the bottom when it comes to how much we pay our teachers, which means we're not having, not all the time, because I love public school. I love public school teachers. So sometimes we're struggling to have qualified or having the best teachers in our schools. And the parents, I think, are frustrated with that. So I think behaviorally, they got metal detectors in these schools now. My daughter told me she felt like she's going to jail when she going to school because it's so locked down. So it was another thing. So the teacher pay and just the struggles. So with this whole school closure thing, it has opened my eyes to so much. And I'm talking about Cumberland County, but I know it can relate to other counties as well. We have schools that have window air conditioners that don't even have a proper heating, don't even have proper heating and air systems.
So
facilities, right? Poor facilities. So that's the thing. Who wants their kids to go to schools like this? So you got aging facilities that they cannot keep up with, that they can't repair because the facilities are so aged. So like I said, in Cumberland County, there's 2 schools they voted on last night. There's a whole list of them that are talking about consolidating and or closing. So you got poor facilities. You got the teachers that's not being paid good, that are going to other professions or other states to teach. And then you have, like I said, this discipline issue where, they put in the metal detectors, and I know why they put them in. But, my daughter's telling me, like, I feel like I want to go to Fayetteville Tech because I feel like I have freedom there. I feel like I can do stuff there. When I go to school, like this whole thing, they got to do special stuff to go to the bathroom. And again, I know all the issues that they're dealing with, right? So it's just, I think those are a number of reasons why right now we don't make it attractive. We say we love public schools and people need to send their kids to public schools, but right now I don't think we're making it attractive for people.
Okay. So basically, I know there's a whole lot more. There's probably more than 10 reasons, but we look at teacher pay, which when teachers are not getting paid enough, they leave. So that increases classroom size. I guess that's where, to me, that's where I'll put it this way. Every public school teacher that I know spends their own money to get supplies for their own classroom.
Absolutely.
You even have really good teachers that you may have a child in your class and they come to school with messed up clothes, shoes, and that teacher will spend money out of their pocket. So when that child gets to school, she tells them to go to the bathroom and they change into a new outfit.
Yeah, so I taught, the reason why I brought up Spring Lake is because, we grew up in Spring Lake. Well, I grew up in Spring Lake until I was 10 years old. So that's home to me. I started off at Manchester Elementary and Mayrudd Williams. I also taught my 2 years in public school. I taught at Spring Lake Middle School. So I taught in a Title I school. And the experience, I know what they're dealing with. I know what they're dealing with at the Title I schools. With having money put aside for kids that that's not going to have lunch money every day. So you have your own set of money that you have aside so you can make sure that your kids eat lunch discreetly and nobody else knows about it. And to go along with that, you were saying something else and I lost my train of thought. But I know what they're dealing with in these classrooms. So go ahead.
Yeah, let's stay with that real quick. Teacher pay. They have a salary. To me, teachers are overwhelmingly underpaid.
Absolutely.
But I don't feel teachers buck the system enough to get the pay that they deserve. And I'll use Wake County, for example. On May 1st, they did a protest and they called it a walkout.
Yes.
But in Wake County, it was already a teacher work day.
It wasn't in Cumberland though.
No, but the thing is, it was already a teacher work day. So the kids aren't gonna there's nothing being lost.
But they did in Cumberland and Bladen, because one of my secretaries was like, look, they about to close Bladen County schools. I gotta go home because they don't have enough coverage. And people got mad at Cumberland County. Them Cumberland County teachers shut that school system down on that Friday. Them kids could not go to school.
But the thing is, like a lot of school districts, like in Chicago, and I'm talking about school districts that contribute the most to the teachers union. You know, the larger school, larger municipality, they contribute more. So it's like their school board voted to make May 1st a teacher work day. You know, like it doesn't help. To me, that doesn't help the teachers because the school system is not losing anything. The kids aren't at school anyways. But if it was my world where I was wanting more pay, I wouldn't come to work.
But that's what I'm saying with our people. Now it was in Wake County and they're there.
No, but you're talking about one day.
Yeah, I mean, you mean like multiple days. Like you're talking about like them school bus drivers when our kids can go to school and the school bus drivers like they
held, and that's what I'm saying. Like, so at Amazon, for example, well, Amazon's a little different because if they walk out, Amazon will just shut it down and write it off on taxes, you know. But I'm talking about like a turkey plant or the Goodyear spot. When them jokers walk out, they don't say, oh, it's going to be an optional day off. They stand out there and they picket and they do not work. It freezes. Teachers stay out of work a whole week, all of them as a collective. But honestly, I think that's the reason why I don't like the teachers union, because I think the teacher union, their focus is not the kids. I think their focus to me is about indoctrinating. You know, for example, 3-year-old. As a teacher, I want my son to learn math, reading, and science.
Okay.
I'll teach my son all the Black history he needs to know. I'll teach him certain aspects, but as a 3rd grader, I'll put this for example. I have a friend that his daughter, 1st grade, and his daughter came home and going through homework, and his daughter was asking about, just talking about gender. You know, what, Daddy, what is that? She's saying that, you know, because I wear pants and all that. So immediately the next day he goes up there and he pulls his daughter out and puts her in private school. Like when you're in the 1st grade, gender shouldn't be no issue. And when we talk about when you gave your 3 of teacher pay, facilities, discipline, I understand there's a whole lot more, but the people that I speak to, the 3 reasons that they said is their top choices, the first one is smaller classroom size. So their child gets more one-on-one with the teacher. The second thing is they're teaching economics. Like when I was in 8th grade, you wouldn't be promoted to the 9th grade unless you passed PEL, politics, economic literacy. Like you had to pass that to go to the 9th grade. But they've removed all of that. Just like the governor of Oregon, she removed the requirement for math and reading to pass high school because she says that's the benefit Black and brown kids. And when they took, I knew something was happening when my son went to the 6th grade. And one day he wrote a report and I said, dude, how come this is not in cursive? And he's like, well, they said we don't have to write in cursive no more. I said, well, in this household, we write in cursive. Because I told him, I said, basically, the entire Constitution, all the amendments, the founding documents are all written in cursive. So
you're right about that.
Would you not learn in cursive, you have to rely on someone else to tell
read it.
you what it actually is.
Yes, yeah.
It's almost like in that movie Life with Martin Lawrence and Eddie Murphy, when that guy passed him that letter and Eddie Murphy was the only one that could read it. He's like, oh, your mama dead. Oh, your daddy died too. And your sister Bessie. And nobody else wanted him to read their letters because none of them could read. So I think that public school to me is hurting itself because I'm an advocate of school choice, because I feel personally that school choice is part of segregation. Because private schools, only people that are, I'm not going to say wealthy or rich, but only people that are financially disciplined can kind of like work the way to get their kids into private school. You know, so it's only well-off folks that's going to be at private school. So all the public school kids is like, it's a lot of kids that want to be in private school, but the parents can't afford to pay it. You know, unless they get a scholarship, even though like everybody I speak to in Fayetteville, they have a child that either goes to Northwood, Fayetteville Christian, Berean Baptist, like the people that they go to Freedom Academy. Like I seldom.
But I don't mean to interrupt, but check this out, because there's a couple of things I wanted to say to some things that you said. Well, now our public dollars are paying for these people, for them to send their kids anywhere that they want, even if they have the money, which I don't agree with that.
Now, where's the public dollars coming from?
Our taxpayers.
Okay, so are the taxpayers paying? Is that money like you? How much did you mention? Was it 18,000 per child? North Carolina?
That's the national average. North Carolina is 13,680. Okay. Is our North Carolina spending.
Let's look at North Carolina per average. So let's take Cumberland County. So every child that goes into the public school, they get $13,000. That school system for them. Mm-hmm. And that's to cover the cost of that student being in that facility, in that school.
Supposedly, yes.
I mean, well, everything is supposedly when it comes to
allegedly, politics.
Yeah. So to me, because you can't afford it, it shouldn't keep you from having a better education for your child. Like if I want my child to teach economics, and the only way now in public school they can take economics is if even a basic form of economics, they have to be in the AP class. They have to be in the honors class. Like in the regular
but now I gotta pay for it with a voucher system, because you got, so before my daughter left public school, those voucher systems, I didn't know the voucher system was creeping in like that. Those classroom sizes were getting bigger. They were not as small as they used to be. Those discipline problems that were in public school was creeping, finding its way. This was some years ago, because she's in 11th grade now. So like I said, we pulled her out when she was in the 4th grade. But that voucher system where there were like, you know, just with anybody would have the opportunity to go into the private schools. Some of that stuff was working its way in private school, but yeah, I don't feel like I should be paying with my public dollars, because you want to send your kid there. Nobody paid for me. We paid out of pocket to send my daughter to the private school. And to your point, they do have to take civics to graduate. And there is a bill, I cannot tell you the name of it right now, but there is a bill that has passed that all college students will be required to take an American or a civics class or American history 1 or 2, or you could call it like American, we call it 132 and 131.
Are you talking about college or high school?
College. Now, high school, they do have to have the civics class still. They don't call it PEL. You know, we had to take it in the 9th grade. There was a PEL class that you had to take in the 9th grade. Now, there is a civics class that you have to take to graduate. My daughter took it. She enjoyed it. I'm gonna let her take American government at Fayetteville Tech next semester, but she thoroughly he did a really good job of teaching them about, you know, state government, national, federal, and everything like that. So yes, they do have to take American government class or civics class. And there is a bill that passed where all college students will either have to take an American government, U.S. history 1 or U.S. history 2. So I tell people, if you got kids that like mine is taking college classes, We're going to go ahead and knock that out because that's something that you're going to have to, that's going to be a requirement by the time that she starts to roll into college, and not only that, they have the curriculum where there's certain things that they want covered. And I wish I didn't know we were going to go into this conversation.
Now, is this a federal law?
This is a state. This is a state law. And they have a curriculum, and they even have the weight of what your final exam would be and the things that you have to cover on that final exam.
Now, is the school system getting any federal funding for incorporating civics?
I don't know if they're getting any federal funding from incorporating civics or not.
Okay. Well, this is one of the things that I look at, like, every time like a bill is passed, I try to look at what's going to help people I care about. What information can I give the people that I care about? And I know that last year, it was part of that bill passed on July 4th. I think it was signed into law, but that was a federal requirement for high schools. Like, prior to graduating high school, you have to take a certain curriculum, certain classes. Now, it was up to each individual state to actually put once the law passed federally, people think it just comes into effect, but every individual state has to put it in their general statute, and they have to pass it at the state level also. And North Carolina is one of those, especially for Department of Transportation. They get more grant money than any other state for highways because they incorporate, when the feds come down with a law, North Carolina is always one of the first states to incorporate it. So they get all that grant money to incorporate it. So
it's called the I just lost it. The founding principle. No, that's not the one that I'm looking for. I just found it for 2026 because it was bothering me. It was on the tip of my tongue to tell you what it was called. What they were waiting, what they're doing, Sam, is, I guess, what there's some of the things we're talking about. They're saying that these kids are graduating from school and they don't know about the Constitution and some other things. Because I was going to try to find the curriculum and tell you exactly what they want covered on that final exam. So they're saying, like, these kids are graduating from school and they don't know anything about their government. And so, when we talk about that, they're saying, how can they be informed? How can they be informed voters? They don't know anything about their government system. So they have taken control to saying, these are the things that you will at least cover in this class. And it will be a part of, the final exam to make sure it is covered. And this is what the weight of it would be. I think what the holdup now is, no, that's Idaho. I was looking for North Carolina's, but what they're waiting on now is the curriculum for it to go through full curriculum review, which I don't think that's a bad idea. I actually think that's something good that North Carolina does. I actually think that's a really, really good idea. But yeah, I'm for school choice too. I just don't want to pay for it out of my pocket.
This is the thing. This is the thing about that. What I'm asking you, the money is going to the school system for that child, right?
Yes.
So if the child chooses not to go to public school, but go to a private school, because that school received that money for that individual child, shouldn't it be okay for that money to go to wherever that child is educated at?
Not really.
Because you're paying for education.
Right. So, a lot of that comes out of our local taxes too. And so when this money is going out of public schools and is going into these private and charter schools. So we're taking money, and when you're talking about having money for facilities and all of that stuff, now this money is being redistributed over there. It's not the money is following the child. And so this money is going into these private sectors. Now it is not in our public schools, which is why we've looked, all of the schools are losing. I know Cumberland County has, and it says it's been going on for years. We're losing kids in our public school, which means we're losing the money to go along with it. So when you start talking about the consequences of that, school closures, school consolidations, not having the maximum amount of kids at a school, these aging facilities. So now we got all these facilities that we haven't had the money to keep up with anyway. They all need to be repaired, and now we can't keep up with them. So we got to close schools down. We're starting to see the residuals of all of these years where because these vouchers been going on for a while, but it's just, what was it, 2 or 3 years ago? They voted, was it last year? They voted where, that to expand it, but it's been going on. So we've been losing kids in public school for a long time. But this is the residuals of what happens when you start having these this money, this public money going into these private sectors now. But like I said, I understand in some instances why a parent chooses to pull their kids out. Now I know you talked about indoctrination. I think some of that happens, but I think that I do think that people get upset. Their child did a sex education class and they don't feel like it should be in there and things like that. But overall, I don't think, because with this new Parents Bill Act, you can't talk about stuff like that in school now anyway. We saw that with a hearing that they had last week about them pulling all these books and stuff out of the library and just the stuff that you can and cannot cover in school because of the Parents Bill of Rights Act. So I don't know where all of this stuff comes from. These people are just
did you
in school that you can't.
Did you see did you see the statement that was made by the superintendent of Mecklenburg County Schools?
Oh, which one? What did he say?
Black guy, kind of slim, shaved head.
Is that the one that they was like fussing out and interrogating like 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, they was asking him about a certain book that talked about a boy going down on his uncle.
Yeah,
and they showed the book and he was like, I don't see nothing wrong with that book. Like, it needs to be in the school. Like, that's the stuff I'm talking about. And
I mean, they said they're coming for us now. Now, I thought he was saying he didn't know that some of those books was in the library.
No, this is the game I feel that they're playing with people. I think, like, people love who they love. I know who I love. You know who you like. I could care less, but I'm not going to sit there and try to pressure you. Well, because I feel this way, you feel this way, or you need to accept it or acknowledge me and recognize me. I don't feel that way. Like, I tell people all the time, you care about who you care. Just don't push it on me.
But
don't try to.
Rights Act, you can't do that. That's why I'm so confused about what people. I'm not saying I can't control what people do in and out of a classroom. With this new Parent Bills of Rights Act, there are certain things you cannot or can do. So a child couldn't tell you, I want to be called they in the classroom, but I don't want you to tell my parents. You can't do that anymore. So the Parent Bill of Rights like shut a lot of that stuff down.
No, and you said it shut it down, but.
Well, I'm not saying they're not supposed to do it. I say that.
I was going to use this example. It's against the law to rob a bank, right?
Yes. And
do people still rob banks?
They do. They do.
They just had this young brother. Well, he identified as Z and TSI, but he identified like that. And they had him on hidden video saying that, they put down this law that we can't say stuff. So all we did was go into ChatGPT and we changed the framing of it, like how we worded it. He's like, but we still going to do it. So they shut down his whole department at NC State.
Oh, okay.
Because he was on camera, hidden camera. They had a little button camera with him acknowledging, we still do this. There was a director. I'm not sure if it's at it may have been at Central, but she said the same thing. She got fired and she sued, but she lost. Like the judge dismissed it because they're like, if this is a violation, you violated it. So I think it's one of those things that, of course, we know what the Parents' Bill of Rights is supposed to do. But there's a lot of teachers that don't acknowledge that. I'm not going to say.
But does that not mean that like people are, I'm put my child in a private or charter school? So you don't think there's some indoctrination going on there too?
Well, I'm not saying there's not, because if I don't like indoctrination, period. Like, I just need you to teach my child the basics. Like I asked my son once, and he was talking about Black history, and I said, well, who was the first professional baseball player? And he was like, Dad, Jackie Robinson. And I said, Aunt, I said 50 years prior to that, Moses Fleetwood Walker played for the pro team in Ohio. But Jackie Robinson was the face that they want you to see. And when I look at the graduates from in African history studies, African American studies, majority are white women. In the master's programs and the PhDs, it's almost 100% are white women.
Oh, absolutely.
So the thing is like there was this show called Blackish, and they was doing Black History Month, and the teacher was white, brunette, and he was saying, who gonna teach my son Black history better than me? We Black. So the teacher, he says, yeah. She's like, well, my undergrad in urban Black studies. And then he was like, oh, yeah, but, that's just undergrad. Well, she said, I have a master's in community involvement, and then I have my PhD. And he was like, oh, but a lot of the things, like, I don't relate. Like, this is what I feel you do. You've learned in books, but you apply it, like you utilize it in life, like in it works hand in hand. You don't go around saying, oh, I'm this and I'm that, you will call me this, and that's the difference. Like I know so many people that they go to college just to be called a doctor. You pay all this money going to debt just so people can call you doctor. Or you go to graduate school, pay all this money to get your MBA, but you don't even like business. You just want a title. Oh, I got my MBA. Or you're on TV and you see somebody with all these cords and they say, oh, I want that. But then, it's like, it's no purpose, but a title is for vanity. And that's the biggest thing. But when back to what you were saying, I feel like finances shouldn't hold a family from having a better education.
No, I agree. I agree with that.
It's almost like the medical. Nobody should be, just like it's a right to have free medical, it should be a right to have a good education.
But that's a bigger problem. I don't think you solve that with the way that they're doing it with charter schools and all that there's been a problem for years with how the money is distributed. So if you live over in, you got in our area, you got this Jack Britt district that's packed out. Everybody want to live there. You also have a higher tax bracket over there where you got more money going into that school system because of where they're located. You go to some of these other schools, and I'll just use Spring Lake, for example, because of what they're going through. Tax brackets is not as much local dollars going into the schools, not as many kids going. And so when you look at, if you go to the school, from what I've been told, I hadn't went over there in a long time, like I said, with these window air conditioners, and don't look, from what I've been told, doesn't even look like a slap of paint been put on the wall. Well, you won't see that. And then we have older schools here, because it's a whole thing. It's a whole list of how old the schools are, what condition that they're in, percentage, and they got it broken down by middle school, high school, and elementary school. But we also have some other elementary schools, and they have people that have invested in those schools over the years because of the type of people that have graduated from those schools in the areas that they're in. So I don't think I don't think they fixed it with this gerrymandering stuff. There is a problem with how the taxes are distributed. Why are we in Cumberland County #1 high school, other than Polytech, which is the early college, and the two early college schools out at Fayetteville State? Everybody want to go to this high school. So by far, they do like the Exceeds or something like that every year. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't be like that. We got like 11 other schools in Cumberland County. You don't see them overpacked and everybody trying to run there. But like I said, you got this tax bracket, you got this money from the local dollars, you got more money going into these schools. That's the problem. That's been a problem for a long time. And I agree with you. I shouldn't be having to move to one part of Cumberland County and get packed out in that one area for my child to have a sound education. I moved partially. One of the reasons why I moved in Hope Mills at the time was because of the education for my son, you know, because they had good schools. I hadn't had my daughter yet, but I just feel like there is a bigger issue or a bigger problem that we need to talk about. And then in our county, they funded the public schools, the county commissioners did, because that's where the funding comes from. They funded them the most that they've ever funded them. I don't know if historically in the last however many years that people could comprehend or understand, but there is a major problem. My thing is, and I'm gonna wrap up because I know we said we was gonna wrap up, but my thing is, when we look at, and I'm looking at my municipality, maybe my area, because this is where I live at. When you look at the issues that they're talking about that these schools got in, we should be asking ourselves, how in the world were kids being educated in these schools, and how in the world did they get there? But now they're so bad, we have to close a whole bunch of them because we can't even keep them and take care of them. And guess what? The elephant in the room is a lot of these are minority schools, poor areas, you know, they don't have as much income. And then a lot of them are heavily filled with minority students. And that's what we're dealing with. So I'm just like, I know it's not Cumberland County. I know it's other areas that have the same issue. So I'm like, how do we get here? How do we get here? And the problem that we're going to see, and it's not just Cumberland, like I said, you're going to see in a couple of years with this money being pulled out of public schools, you're going to see a whole bunch of schools end up in the same position that Cumberland County Schools is in right now. Because now you're talking about teachers losing their jobs. Yeah, administrators losing their jobs. But go ahead.
Let me give you an example of, like, you have experienced both private and public. Mm-hmm. So you can advocate, like, I'm pretty sure you can advocate for both private and public almost equally.
Absolutely.
Because you've experienced it. But here in North Carolina, the old governor, Cooper, he did a commercial. It was like a 2-minute commercial. And he talked about how public schools are the mainstay, the backbone of the community, and how important, how influential, how they shape lives. And I'm listening to that and I'm like, you know, that's definitely cool that he's advocating, but how does he know? Because his son went to Ravenscroft, which is like $30,000 a year. Like all through K through 12, he was a student at Ravenscroft here in Raleigh. And then his daughters both went to St. Mary's, which is almost $54,000 a year. So if you've never, it's almost like, I just don't believe you can advocate for something if you haven't experienced it. You know, so I understand wanting voters and stuff. And again, I personally feel teachers need to go harder in the paint. Like, stay out a whole week. Do like them bus drivers did. Remember during civil rights, the bus boycott?
Boycott shut the whole system down. We bankrupted
for how long? Over a year.
Over a year, yeah.
And what did the Black community do? They was carpooling. The ones that had vehicles, they was shuttling the women.
Yeah, they came up with a system, but that's what we talk about now. Pull these people economic power away from them to make them
mobilize
and be consistent with it. But the last thing I'm gonna say about that is you were talking about how he was talking about the schools. So people love to say they love public school and they love the teachers and all of that. But it's just like saying, I love you, but I ain't going to invest in you. I'm going to give you all these accolades. I'm going to say how wonderful you are, but our words do not match how we have funded public schools in North Carolina, not just Cumberland County. In North Carolina, our words do not match the money and the investment that has, and I know people like, oh, it's not about money and all that. It is about money when you got my child sitting in a cold classroom and their food is not fresh. It absolutely is about money and resources. So don't tell me that. But if you love me and you care about me so much, I expect for you to invest in me the way that you talk about me. And we have not done that in North Carolina.
At all. And that's my thing. But I'm telling you, if the teachers went hard in the paint like a bus boycott, not just wait for not just wait for somebody to say, okay, boycott Target. Okay, it's over. Now you can go back to Target. You know, my thing is this. It's like, and I might get in trouble for saying this, but went to Target and I told my wife, I said, I'm gonna have my phone on live. And any black folks I see, I'm gonna be like, we ain't supposed to be in here. You know, like, but she ran in to get something. And so technically I didn't go into Target.
Oh, okay.
So I sat in the parking. I sat in the parking lot.
You out there, but go ahead.
And I saw so many black folks that was walking past the car because I parked right near the door, just going in there. And the thing is like, the way our society is, we're not in a place to where anybody has heart. Like when you talk about, you know, I know you're big on civil rights and stuff, which we're going to touch on, you know, later.
You got 10 minutes, Sam, to touch on it. But go ahead, because you know you creeping into my bedtime, but go ahead.
The thing is like, people now don't have that same. It's only about social media or viral. And if it doesn't happen, okay, well, let's wait for the next thing. And that's, to me, that's the difference between the civil rights people now and the civil rights people back then. They literally was willing to give their life, lay it down. But people here, they say they'll do it. They'll advocate for certain things. But when it comes down to it, their actions show otherwise. But I'm going to, if you have any closing comments that you would like to say, and I know we said an hour, we're on an hour and a half, and
yeah. But what I want to piggyback on what you're talking about now, and that's going to be my closing. If you are ever able, if you are able to ever go to Selma, Alabama to do the Bloody Sunday events that go on, is usually the end of February going into early March. It just depends. You can go independently to do a tour, but it is different when you are there that weekend. I've met a lot of people there. I've met a lot of learning it, reading it in a book, looking at a documentary is different from actually experiencing what you experience when you go there that weekend. Now, I do a lot because I've done conferences there and I've taken a group of students. We've taken a group of students from 2 different colleges together there. Life-changing. I wish Joanne Bland just died a couple of months ago. She was a go-to person that we would have speak to the students every time that they went. She was, they called them foot soldiers. So they were the children of the march. So they were children doing the bridge crossing and all of those things. And when they describe to you, her sister has written a book, last name is Lowry, I can't think of her first name, where she still has a knot in the back of her head where she was hit going across that bridge, and how they tell you that they thought it was rain, but they had blood drenching down their bodies. There's a church called Brown Chapel right before when you're about to go over the bridge, but then there's a housing project behind it. So that's where they live. And they was like, they didn't just beat us on that bridge. They beat us into our houses. Just the impact, just them talking about what they went through and things that they've seen. Viola Liuzio, I was just telling you about, she was an Italian woman. She was not African-American, but she helped transport people that were fighting for voters' rights acts, were killed, had several young children. Her daughter came back to something that they held for her. But I'm just saying, like, if you're able to ever go experience that, I've never done the march because they always do the march on a Sunday evening and I always have to go back. But I've done that bridge. I've walked across that bridge. I've taken pictures across that bridge. It is life-changing. And like I said, they have a big breakfast where they used to bring John Lewis and all of those people back every year. It is a very distressed community. So all of that history that's there's a lot of money that comes in that weekend or during that time, but there's not a lot of money that is generated in that community. So that's pretty sad. But you can go to the Dallas County Courthouse where Dr. King and all of them were jailed, and they had a lot of stuff, that went on there. But just experiencing that what these people is deeper. It is the movie Selma, but like I said, if you ever are able to ever go through that weekend, but mine is usually structured, like I said, because I knew people there, and so I was able to get a lot of one-on-one like information and special things set up for myself and my kids. But went to a lot of the museums there. The lynching museum that they have there is, again, one of the most influential things that students talk about. But you can plan, if you work with young people, college young people, you should take them there, and you should take them there during that time. But I work with a gentleman here locally that's very well connected there, who actually got me into going. You should go. It's life changing. It will make you think about voting rights differently. It will make you will learn stuff about the Civil Rights Act, the 1965 Civil Rights Act, and just things in general that you could never get out of a book or a movie or anything like that. So just those are my closing things. Like you said, I'm very passionate about civil rights. I'm going to stop there. My passion and my dream is to go to all of the civil rights museums in the United States. I've hit most of them on the Northeast. But if you're ever able to go, I have a lot of things that I've purchased and I have from going there. You should go. It is absolutely life-changing. And I'm just going to stop there. I thank you for having me as a guest and being able to share my opinions and my beliefs, my experiences, my research and things with you all tonight. And I really hope this is successful. And thank you for giving me this platform, Sam. And thank you for everybody that logged in tonight.
I really appreciate you sharing your time. And I know we ran over, but I think a lot of people, viewers, are stating how much they learned. They really enjoyed your insight. So I just think that we continue to grow. I want to ask that everybody continue to share, subscribe, share it with people. And again, this platform is about dialogue. We're at a point where if somebody is left, you can't talk to the right and vice versa. I want us all, because you know us, we don't always agree on everything, but we can talk, like we can always agree to disagree and not have any hard feelings. And that's how it used to be. We can't even talk at tables now. We can't do certain things. So this podcast is to promote just open dialogue. And when people go to subscribe to the different social media, Spotify or anything, I just ask that you go with an open mind, because I think you had mentioned to me, it's not just about when you listen, you learn to have empathy. And I'm real big on having empathy. So like, we can't learn or grow without that. We need to have other people's, thoughts to kind of like know what they're going through. So I definitely appreciate that. And we're going to end this show. I want to thank everybody again. Definitely hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and we will see you next time. And if you could just hold.
Okay. Have a good night.